Hi there, it's Nicole, and I'm so glad you are joining me. Today I'm working with the Friends of the Ocean DSP to build a double page 12 by 12 layout. I had so much fun creating with this collection recently that I was feeling inspired to work with it again. I still have quite a bit left, but hopefully you're not sick of seeing it yet, because I'm planning to use it one more time after this. But this time, I'm doing things a little differently. I've pulled out this binder I've had in my craft room since 2009. And as you can see, it's very full. Back when I first started scrapbooking, I used to buy magazines for ideas and inspiration. Now you can just go on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, or even here on YouTube. After a year or two of buying magazines, it could have been 3 or 4, I had a lot of them. And to avoid drowning in paper, I started tearing out pages with layouts that I wanted to recreate or I was inspired by, and I tucked them into these plastic page protectors with the idea I'd organize them later. So that never happened. And fast forward to today, let me just move this binder out of the way. I was flipping through the binder, debating whether or not it's finally time to get rid of it, when I got an idea to challenge myself to actually use these sketches. I'm going to use this sketch right here. It's from Creating Keepsakes magazine, and it's one of Becky's sketches. So every week, I'll choose a new sketch and create a layout based on it, and to make them my own. As you can see, I've got a lot of options to choose from. So I think it'll be fun to see how many I can work through over the summer months. I don't know about you, but I'm actually pretty busy during the warmer season, and finding time to scrapbook can be a challenge. I hope you'll follow along with me for this little throwback sketch challenge. Now, my scrapbooking style has changed since 2009. Back then, embellishment clusters weren't really a thing or something that I did. I'd just get as many photos down as I could, add a title, and maybe a journaling spot, and I would call it done. So back to the layout I chose for today. It has spots for 11 photos, and here are the ones I'm documenting. They're from a visit to an aquarium. For the right side of the spread, the sketch includes 8 3 by 4 inch landscape photos. So I printed mine at home, and with the white border included, they're approximately 2 by 7/8 by 3 by 7/8. So for the left side, there's a spot for a 4 by 6 landscape photo. There's also a portrait photo, and I'm guessing on the size here, but mine is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. And then there's one more landscape photo at 3 by 7/8 by 3 by 7/8 inches. I'm using pattern paper on each side of the column. So I'm looking for something that's cut in the right direction, wide enough to span both sides, about 4 to 4.5 inches wide. Now I like this lobster and crab pattern. It's big enough and could definitely work, but I think we can do better. This piece here has the pattern running in the wrong direction, and so does this one. I'll remove those right away since they won't work. Now the starfish paper could definitely work. This is the right size, the direction is good. There's no direction in this paper. I'm also considering this one with the sea creatures. It's oriented the right way too, and I have this scrap and a full sheet of it, and I only need the scrap for now. This one here could work as well. I do have quite a bit of it, but it seems more busy. I think it's because there's less white space showing between the images, but it could be a contender anyway. So now I'm down to 3 choices. Let's take a look through my photos one more time to see which pattern paper coordinates best. Now, this wasn't your typical aquarium. It was more of a learning center, very interactive, and quite small. Because of that, I'm going to eliminate this pattern. It just doesn't feel like the right fit for these photos. Plus, I think I already have an idea for a future layout that it'll suit better. I do like this one with all the sea life, but the starfish are really great too. So let's flip this. Let's flip it over. Oh, I love this coral pattern. And the back of the other one is a pink wave. Yep, that's my answer. I'm more likely to use the coral pattern paper on another layout, so I'm going with the sea creature print for this one. I'm going to use Calypso Coral cardstock as the background color. There isn't a lot of coral in my photos, but I think it really complements the blue tones, and I feel like it helps tone down that bright yellow water table in the picture. I think it's going to look great. I've roughly worked out the measurements. I'll be using a 2-inch strip going down both sides because I want the coral cardstock to overlap the sea creature paper. I'm trimming it down to 8 by 1/8 inch. That leaves me with about a 4-inch strip, which I'm going to save for another project. Quick side note, have you ever wondered what to do with those thin, undersized cardstock inserts that come in album page protectors? Before Stampin' Up started carrying 12 by 12 albums, I bought a few from Michaels. Not my favorite, but they'll do. Anyway, those albums came with cardstock inserts. And since you're not going to see them behind the layers, I'm using one here as the base. Just keep in mind, they aren't a true 12 by 12. So your layers may hang over the edge a bit like this. You can see now the pattern paper hangs past the insert in the back, but it won't matter once it's in the album. For the left side of the layout, I'm going to use white Willow cardstock as my base. When I'm placing my photos, I like to think about a couple of things. The direction the subjects are facing or moving, and colors in the photos. For example, I want to break up the yellow by spreading these photos out across the column. Now over on the left page, the sketch just shows 3 squares and a title. No room for journaling. I'll definitely be adding some in later. Next, I'm bringing in some photo mats. I've got this scrap of Calypso Coral cardstock left over from the right-hand page. Now it's too small for the 4x6 photo, but it's the perfect size for this smaller picture of Evan, my youngest son. Yeah, I don't mind that. It does bring the color over. I did think about using the sea creature paper instead, so I'm going to place that behind and take a look. Nope, I do not like that. Not at all. Now I'm thinking, what if I use the coral striped pattern paper instead of the solid? I don't mind that. Let's try it on that landscaped photo. Oh yes, I really like that. It makes the blue sky really pop. I'm thinking I want a wider mat for this one, and I can't quite decide if I want the stripes running vertically or horizontally. I'm going to trim that down and I'll be right back. And I prefer the stripes running horizontal. I cut the mat to 6 1/4 by 5. I wanted to see about 1/2 inch above and below the photo and just 1/4 inch on each side. While I was off camera, this one piece of pattern paper accidentally fell onto the layout. And you know what? I kind of like it. It helps fill in some of the open white space and gives the whole layout more of a continuous 12 by 24 look. So now I'm going to try the coral mat again on the picture of Evan. Okay, I don't mind it. It's not bad. But as I'm looking, the picture of the fish tank caught my eye. I'm noticing there's a lot of blue-green tones in it. And it's the only picture with that coloring. Since Summer Splash is one of the coordinating colors in this collection, I think I'll try matting it with that instead and see how it looks. Okay, you know what? That's not bad. Let me just try it on the other photo to compare. Yeah, nope. I really like it on the picture of Evan. I'm gonna go for it. If I trim it down to 4x6, that gives me a good size mat and it'll sit perfectly on the bottom of the layout, just like the sketch calls for. So looking at everything now, I think there's just a bit too much pattern paper showing. I'm going to scooch it in a little bit. Yep, that looks way better. Now this looks like it's about 3 inches wide. And to repeat the coral cardstock to the left side, I've got a 1 inch piece here. I'm going to tuck it in behind the pattern paper. Now I did cut this to 1 inch, but that's not necessarily how much will show once it's all layered in. This is really starting to come together, but the last photo needs a mat. It's blending in with the white background way too much, and I don't really want to introduce more bright colors. There's a lot of brown in the photos. The floor in this one, the ceiling of the building, and even the rocks around the lobster. So I grabbed a scrap from the Country Woods DSP. It's a nice brown wood grain, and I love how it grounds the photo. And it just so happens I had a tag left over from a previous layout that I can tuck in over on the right-hand side of the page to start an embellishment cluster and to carry that pattern over to the right side. So for my title, I went with Ocean Encounters. I created it on the Cricut using the print then cut feature. I did look up the hex code for the Summer Splash color, but it looked a bit too blue to me. Then I tried a different code, and that was even worse. So I'm going to go with the one that looks best. The font for the word ocean is called Hello Valentina, and I'll link that in the description box below. In the sketch, the title is positioned up and down like this, but I prefer it here instead. And now this gives me the perfect spot for my journaling. And I used Cricut Sans for the word encounters. And that word is printed in the early Espresso color. I added a white offset, but it wasn't showing up all that well. So I created a second offset and I just cut it out from the same wood grain paper to tie it all in together. Before I get too much further in this process, I'm going to ink the edges with early Espresso and a sponge. Oh right, I better cut this paper down to 3 inches first. I'm just double checking so I don't trim the wrong side. I want that pattern to still match up. It's not super important, but it's the little details like that that do make a difference. I'm also making a note to myself not to ink right on the seam, so it will look like one continuous piece. I'm going to ink distress the photos also. I think it'll help define them and make them stand out just that little bit more. These pictures were taken on our trip to the East Coast, Canada, back in 2023. I've used this collection to document a few layouts from this trip already, and I think it just works so well with my photos. Oh dang, I made a mental note not to do that, and what did I just do? That's okay. I'll just trim a tiny bit off and no one will ever know. Back to the photos. This aquarium is called the Fundy Discovery Aquarium. It's located right on the Bay of Fundy in the town of St. Andrews by the Sea in New Brunswick. It's part of the Huntsman Marine Science Center, and while it's not a huge facility, It's an engaging and educational place to visit, especially with kids. But even Evan, who was 15, still had a great time. The space is filled with interactive exhibits, including touch tanks where you can hold sea stars and other marine life while learning all sorts of fascinating facts about them. There's also larger tanks featuring local species like salmon and lobsters, and everything is focused on unique ecosystems of the Fundy Bay. We really enjoyed our morning at this aquarium. To add a bit of interest to this photo mat, I thought it would be fun to use this embossing folder to add some waves to the paper. I want the waves to run horizontally. I'll place the cardstock inside the folder like so, with the Stampin' Up logo facing up. Pay attention to your sandwich for your machine and place the folder so that the fold end goes in first. Now, isn't that fun? Now it's time to start creating the embellishments for this layout. I've pulled out a few stamp and die bundles that I think will work nicely. Seaside Wishes, Beauty of the Deep, and Ocean Friends. I also have a little bin where I keep leftover elements from previous layouts or card projects. I'm going to sift through that and pull out anything I think could work here. Now, for the most part, I like to save extra stamped icons and die cuts to use on future projects. It doesn't always work out. The colors or themes don't always match. Today, I think I've got a few that could totally work, like this piece of seaweed, or maybe it's algae. I think I originally stamped it in Pool Party, but it coordinates really well here. I really love these lemon lime twist seaweed pieces. They're definitely making it onto this page. I also have a few sand dollars that I've previously die cut out from Petal Pink cardstock. Before I build any of my embellishment clusters, I want to figure out where my journaling is going to sit. So off camera, I typed it out onto a 4x2 inch text box and set the line spacing to 1x5. I had every intention of cutting it into strips, but once I saw it printed on the Petal Pink's cardstock, I loved how it filled in this space, and it gives me a great spot to anchor my title to. I'll just ink up the edges and get that attached into place. So while I was off camera, I embossed and die cut some of the sand dollars from Calypso Coral and a couple of the coral pieces from Lemon Lime Twist. That coral shape is one of my favorites from the Ocean Friends dies. I love all that texture and movement it gives. Starting with the largest icons, the large sand dollar, and I think the coral piece will look really good tucked in behind the title. I like that. Now another coral down here behind the sand dollar, and I'm really enjoying adding these pops of green in here. I'm trying to make use of some leftover bits from earlier projects, and I'm determined to make this coral work here. I'm struggling. Okay, finally. I've decided to introduce just a touch of bright pink to this layout. So I die cut out this cute little crab from the pattern paper, and I also stamped and die cut a few starfish from Melon Mambo, and I made a few more in Calypso Coral. Then I cut out a mini lobster using the Friendly Fins dies. I really underestimated this bundle. There are so many standalone dies in this set, and I absolutely love them all. I also die cut a few fish out of the Summer Splash color, and they are so cute. Some of these items might be retired or no longer available, but whatever is current, I'll have listed in the description box below if you're interested in checking it out. I love these little fish. I'm going to move things around, playing with the placement of elements in each cluster until everything feels right. I like it when elements overlap and tuck under photos. I feel it helps create this beautiful layered look. We didn't stay long at the aquarium, maybe about an hour to an hour and a half. And like I mentioned earlier, it was quite small, but really, really cool and a fun stop before we headed back to visit our oldest son, Aiden, at the university he was attending. This lobster die cut feels a bit big for the clusters, but what if I tucked it under the title? Yeah, perfect. If you can spot the very blue photo on the lower right of the layout, it is the coast of Maine. I didn't realize how close we were. Funny story, while we were there, our cell phones binged, letting us know we were picking up US cell towers. We panicked for a second because we thought this might end up being a very expensive visit. The town of St. Andrews by the Sea was so unique and memorable. If you've ever been there, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experience. Now, my main goal here was just to repeat light colors across the layout. For a little extra sparkle, I'm using the Sunny Day Iridescent Dots in Melon Mambo. They've got a beautiful shimmer and are a great match for this layout. I'm placing them in clusters of 3. There are 2 sizes, so I'll be mixing them in around the embellishment clusters. Have you ever had one of those days where your mouth just doesn't cooperate with your brain? That's me today. Total tongue-tied chaos. So I truly appreciate you sticking with me through this video, and I hope it's not too noticeable. I die cut a rectangle from the coral striped pattern paper using one of the dies from my stash, and I used that to mat the word favorite. I felt this was the perfect way to bring that pattern paper over to the right side of the layout. I stamped another word caption that reads Happy Day using stamps from my stash. So here's a close-up of the project. In this cluster, I popped up the crab for a bit of fun. I used dimensionals for the little lobster on the right. I'm super happy with how it turned out. Now let's take a look at the sketch I started with. I stuck pretty close to it with the 2 columns of 4 photos, and I added pattern paper on both sides of the columns. And then, of course, an embellishment cluster. On the left, my photos are smaller than what's shown, I'm guessing, but I made up for it with the larger mats. Now, I placed the title in the same general spot, but turned it horizontal instead of vertical, which gave me the perfect place to tuck in my journaling. I did end up adding that 3-inch strip of pattern paper that wasn't in the original sketch. And while I do love a bit of white space, I think the pattern paper really added something extra here. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me today. I really appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this layout, I'd love it if you gave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more scrapbook inspiration. If you've ever visited the Bay of Fundy or a small town aquarium, I'd love to hear your stories. Drop that in the comments below. For still shots of this layout and others I've created, be sure to check out my Instagram. Oh, and before I go, I did end up adding a few stamped bubbles around some of the clusters to fill in the space a bit more and echo the bubbles from the pattern paper. You can see that detail in the still shots as well. And if you're looking for more inspiration using this collection, check out this playlist right here. Until next time, happy crafting.